Let's play a game of Lost and Found with Aerosmith's 1979 album A Night in the Ruts. During the period of between 1978 and 1979, they lost a producer, they lost a fortune, they lost production time when they had to go out on the road to finance the album and all those unpaid hotel bills. They lost lyrics, they nearly lost Steve Tyler because of his drug dependencies, and perhaps most seriously of all, they lost Joe Perry. Yet, on the found side, is it just me, or did we find ourselves with one really rockin' album? Let's take a deep dive and find out. I first heard Night in the Ruts back in about 1979 when it first came out, and I was about 13 or 14 and an impressionable teenager to boot. And I didn't have it on vinyl at that point. No, it was on one side of a C90 mixtape that a friend had put together for me. But recently I've been stumbled across this, and look at that. A limited edition Australian first pressing of the album. Whoa, still in beautiful condition. And it was a limited pressing because they only did one of it. It wasn't that popular, and I don't think it's been that popular ever since. So does it still hold up all these years later and give me those feelings of the soundtrack to summer back in 1979? Or has it mellowed and got a bit bitter and a bit stale with age? Let's look at the album tracks. Side 1, track 1, and it's no surprise. And it should be no surprise that Aerosmith come hurtling out of the gate with a swaggering boogie, which is a real statement of intent. The lyrics talk about the history of the band up to that point, and it gives us a sense of a band that's really going to start moving towards an even higher peak than one that's about to peter out. I really enjoy some of the lyrics here. I like when they're talking about old Clive Davis said he's surely going to make us a star. If Japanese can boil teas, then where's the blank my royalties? So this is a band that's really talking about life that's tough on the road and that things aren't going so well at this point. But still, they're doing okay with this track. It crunches all the way, and then it moves, segues beautifully in Chiquita, which has this off-kilter metallic edge to the riff, which really grabs your Night in the Ruts and doesn't let go until the instrumental, which comes down into a sort of a mellow type of groove, and it never really ascends out of there. There's worrying signs in this song though, because they've got a lot of horns going. There's a horn section playing along, and it worries me that the horns are louder than the guitars in the outro. Not a healthy state of affairs. But Chiquita, she got that poppy-eyed desire. More drug references. Interesting to hear what was going through Steve Tyler's mind at that time. Still, it kicks butt, this song, and I kind of like it. Joe Perry's missing from the next track, which might tell us more about Joe's judgment than it does about the quality of the track or the politics that were in the band at the time. But it's a cover of the Shangri-La's classic, Remember Walking in the Sand. Apparently the record company didn't think there were enough singles on this album, so they sent Aerosmith back into the studio, and this is what they came up with. It's got an semi-authentic doo-wop feel to it, and Steve sings like a man who's a few dollars short approaching an unsympathetic drug dealer. I think the word unsympathetic might have been redundant there. It goes through its highs, its lows, its dramatic phases and all of that, but then it sort of fades away into an inconsequential nothingness. Not the best track for mine. Cheesecake rounds out the first side, and the good news is that Joe Perry is back in the saddle, and he's got his bottleneck out and it's shimmering up and down that guitar neck, and everything sounds great. This is a song all about sex, drugs and rock. No, it's just about sex and objectionable depictions of sex as well. I'm one of these people who's really lucky that I don't listen to lyrics until I get fully immersed or engaged in a song. But apparently they had to wait so long for Steve to come up with the lyrics that Joe Perry wanted to leave mid-session just because of this. Steve lost his lyrics book, and in the meantime he got a PhD at the School of Double Entendres, and some of these metaphors are so weak that he should give one of those entendres back. Still, there's a great breakdown in the middle with Joe playing lovely soft slide guitar, accentuated by Joey Kramer's ride cymbal. Great stuff. Great stuff. It's a fangin' way to end the first side, so long as you don't want to be immersed with those lyrics and have those tattooed across your brain. Side 2 kicks off with 3 Mile Smile. I don't know what a 3 Mile Smile is, and if the past or side 1 is any indication, I don't really want to know either. But still, this is spankin', fangin' rock, which reminds me a lot of Alice Cooper's great bands from the mid-1970s. There's huge riffage all over this. This is an encyclopedia in riff and rock and roll riffage. Tom Hamilton's bass playing is absolutely stellar, and then at about the halfway mark, the song just absolutely takes off with a faster groove that builds and builds towards a climax, featuring Jimmy Crespo's white lightning guitar solos. It's an absolutely stellar song, and one which holds up to this day. You can't just sit down, you've got to get up and boogie during this one. The second cover on the album is of the 1940s blues staple Reefer-Headed Woman, and it's on this track that Aerosmith prove that they can blues it, just like all the other white bands. Still, it's kind of stodgy, it's all denim and whiskey, it rocks more than it rolls. But Steve does show that he might give Elwood Blues a run for his money on harmonica. He's that good. Joe chimes in with this smoking wah guitar solo, but the band sort of struggles to keep the groove rolling behind him. It's nothing that Humble Pie didn't milk better in the early 1970s when they set the bar for that type of white boy blues. But it's a pretty low bar, and I'm not too sure about this one. Still. The next track up is Bone to Bone, Coney Island White Fish Boy. And if you think that's a mouthful, wait until you hear that a Coney Island White Fish Boy is slang for a used condom. A used one, mind you. There's some great riffage in this song. It just kicks along beautifully, and the rhythm section and Brad Whitford on guitar are as tight as a fish's butt. It starts at breakneck speed, it keeps going hard, never really goes to anywhere or hits great heights, but it doesn't matter. Where it's sitting is just absolutely fine by me. A real killer. The third and final cover is up next, and it's of the Yardbirds' Think About It, co-written by Jimmy Page. And when I think about it, I feel it's really nice that Aerosmith decided to give credit where credit was due and list Jimmy Page's name on the album. This song doesn't really get out of the 60s, but that's okay because there's some instrumental madness that comes halfway through the song, and we get some bodacious psychedelic in a good old-fashioned rave up, which the band stretches their legs and bends our minds. Easily the best of the three covers for me. The album closes with Mia, which is Aerosmith's version of the Corgis' Everybody's Gotta Learn Sometime. Doom, doom, doom. Think about it. It kind of makes sense. The song could have been written about Steve Tyler's daughter, Mia, or about Joe Perry, MIA, who was missing in action and no longer around. Something again about Joe's quality control. Whatever. After an album full of PhD lyrical, metaphorical double entendres, Steve now wants us to believe that he has a heart. And I'm glad that this is the last song on the album because it's so easy to lift the needle. It's pretty easy to understand why many people, critics and fans, thought that the band was doomed at this point. F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote that there are no second acts in American lives, but not even he would know that Aerosmith could rise and would find it so difficult for them to Joe perish. So what do I really think about Aerosmith's Night in the Ruts after all of these years, and time has passed from being an impressionable 14-year-old kid to now being somewhat more mature? Is it a masterpiece? No. Is it a flawed masterpiece? I don't think so. But it still has the ability to floor me and get me on the floor when I want to shake my groove thing. 3 Mile Smile will be one of my favourite rockers until the day that I die. Joe Perry's guitar work is stellar throughout. And Steve Tyler does hit some notes vocally, which have to be heard to be believed. So it's kind of a guilty pleasure for me. And speaking of pleasure, if music gives you pleasure in any way, shape, or form, then who am I to argue with your opinion? And if you'd like my opinion on another great album, check out this one. Thanks for watching. Until next time, bye now.